Yeah, maybe two minutes will start. Good afternoon, everyone. Can I ask you all to come forward and we can have a small group conversation? Alain, you want to come and join me? Thank you. We are a small group. This was very much a last-minute session that was organized, so we're keeping it informal. And I would really like to have an exchange with whoever's here in the room to get all of your perspectives in as well. Try another one. If you can't hear, can you hear on the headphones or not? Can you hear on the headphones? Yeah? Okay, good. Great. Yeah. My name is Timo Gaasbeek. I'm from the Netherlands Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and I work in the food security team. I've been working on food security, water, climate, and conflict for the last 25 years. Only joined the ministry quite recently. And the reason why this session is being organized is that a few things came together. We are talking about protection of nature. We're just at the CBD COP and the need to avoid further degradation of the world's nature. At the same time, in agriculture, we are looking under climate change at a reduction in yields. So to feed the world's population, we need more land. And the food system is responsible for about a third of the global emissions. Part of that is from land use change. So if we want to feed the world and protect nature, we have a planning issue, a land use planning issue. Because the space that we have for food and livestock feed and biofuels and fibers for our clothes and nature is a zero-sum game. We cannot make more land. And that's a challenge. I hear people talking about we need to protect nature, so be careful with agriculture. I hear a discussion about livestock feed. But the whole big picture is a zero-sum game. I realized when it registered with me that it's a zero-sum game, I realized that I actually don't hear this being discussed very much. So I thought let's have a conversation about the issue and let's have a conversation about whether there are any possible ways forward and what we need to think about. Whether this needs more attention or whether it's a non-issue, I don't know. I got worried when I started realizing these things, but I'd like to exchange with all of you. With me here is Alain Ndoli. I will ask you to introduce yourself. Alain's with IUCN. There are more speakers who are supposed to come. Unfortunately, because we organized it last minute, one speaker had to cancel, one speaker might be late, and one speaker I haven't got a response from. So we might be done in 30 minutes, and then you can do other things. Yeah? Let's not stretch it for longer than needed, but let's have a conversation and see. Please come forward and we can have an easier conversation. We'll have a mic running around, so whoever has questions can pass it on and join the conversation. I'll get a headphone as well. Alain, maybe you can introduce yourself.
Thanks very much, Timo. My name is Alain Dolly. I work with IUCN, the International Union for Conservation of Nature. I'm the regional program manager for Eastern and Southern Africa, regional office in Nairobi, but currently seconded to the East African community in Arusha. Yeah, I have a background in soil sciences, natural resource management, and have been working in this area for the last 17 years. So I hope to share with you my understanding and my experience, and also hear from you. Thank you.
Maybe share your
Good. Thanks very much, Timo. Maybe briefly on this subject, my experience is mainly in Africa, so I will tend to lean on much on Africa. Most of the challenges we are facing are linked to land or ecosystem degradation, which are induced by climate change. And this has been pushing communities to seek fertile lands, usually venturing to more marginal lands which are more vulnerable to climate change. Deforestation for agriculture is also very prominent. In some of the countries I've worked in, like Ethiopia, you even find contradictions within the government whereby farmers open up new area for, which was a forested area for agriculture. The Minister of Agriculture come running with inputs, as you know, they have achieved their targets because land has increased, then that was their target. But the Minister of, which is in charge of forests, now has lost, and that's the zero-sum game Timothy was was mentioning when we started. So this deforestation for agriculture is leading to reduced carbon sink, of course, but also reduced biodiversity and sustainability of all we can do in the landscapes. We have seen some places whereby you sit with communities and they tell you the other, for instance, in one of the places we worked in Ethiopia, in Albaminch, people would tell you that a long time ago, people in upland, people from the valley used to go for wages in upland, and they would earn their wages from cultivating up there for the people there because land was fertile there. But over one generation, erosion took all the soil down, and now communities which are in the highlands are becoming now the labor for the people in the wetlands, so in the lower lands. So then also I would mention about the competition between land use. We have seen population growth and a lot of urbanization. And, you know, people with money in cities are now encroaching the most fertile lands which could have served for agriculture. But because of unplanned, settlements and all of these things, we will realize that most of the good lands for agriculture are now gone for other sectors. And that development will never have a good transition. This has also caused a lot of tensions between communities, especially when you see climate change impact in countries like Kenya. I worked in Kajiado. This is the southern part of Kenya, whereby most of the population are pastoralists. And when water is scarce, people keeping livestock tends to even invade, cropland areas for fodder and all of these things. You have heard about Turkana, gun shootings, and all of these conflicts. Lastly, I would also mention about the overuse and sustainable farming practices, because due to short-term goals of farmers, they need to put food on table. The issue of sustainability comes later on. You know what Gandhi once said, that who cares about environment when the primary needs are not met? So they want first food today, then tomorrow will take care of itself. On challenges, I will stop there, but maybe if time allows, I can use 1 minute to give my reflection on possible solutions, because however much we need to conserve environment, the local communities also need the basic, needs, food on table, and we need to balance these trade-offs. One of the big areas that I see most of our governments needs to work on and development partners needs to support is on governance and proper planning at national and landscape levels. Because you can't imagine, I come from Rwanda, for instance, one of the smallest countries. You find the ministry which is in charge of mining is having targets to extend the area. The agriculture, ministry has goals to go from 39 to 42% of land and agriculture. I was working with the Minister of Environment having a goal to go beyond 30%, to 35%. With the current now commitments of 30 by 30, most of countries are going that way. But if you have all those goals which are not harmonized at national level, it will be hard to harmonize them at regional and even at global levels. So that will be one of the biggest area to work on. And another area would mainly be to promote sustainable practices to use at least the optimum productivity in the current lands. Because people go by, business models. If investing in soil fertility is expensive at short term, they would rather go for extensification. So we need really to work hard on this, keep soils in situ, invest in efficient water use, drought-tolerant varieties, all these best practices to minimize the new expansions. Thank you, Timo.
Thank you very much, Alain. At national level, planning you mentioned, but a lot of our food is traded between countries. Not every country can feed itself. So what does it mean at an international scale? I'll ask you first, and then I'll open the floor to all of you, because I'd like to hear your suggestions as well.
Yeah, thanks very much. Yeah, to me, I think the plannings, I've worked, now I'm seconded to East African community, and I've seen that these regional and international, communities have limited kind of authority when you don't influence first the parties, the national levels. So I know maybe not every country can feed itself for all the types of commodities they want. But again, if each country is setting different targets which are contradictory, it will end up to the same, box. So I would say, for instance, we have seen that countries which were having even reached the optimum or the required threshold on forest cover, for instance, Tanzania, which has now more than 35% covered by natural forests, being requested to do the OECMs, other area conservation areas in the acronyms. So I would say the pressure is on all the sides, but planning at regional and international levels in terms of trade is very critical, especially when it comes to, I will say when it comes to this, the strengths from each country. I remember one of the studies that was done in the East African region on the seasonalities of fruits, for instance, saying that you don't need to struggle to get avocados when it's not your season, it's the season in Uganda or in Kenya. But we realized that the business flow by, the power of purchase. And if the power of purchase is still affected by the climate change, people won't again be able to afford. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Can I give the mic to any one of you to share your thoughts? Who wants to start? Yes. Please introduce yourself, and we all know who you are.
I'm Mikako. I'm from Japan. Before I was in WWF and in charge of the Red Plus. Now I'm independent and rather working on the ESG side. So I was in the TNFD, Task Force for Nature-Related Financial Disclosure, alternate member. But my concern is rather, how can I say, not only about agriculture or conservation, but also we talk about a lot about CDL, that is carbon removal. And I don't remember exact figure by IPCC, but IPCC report strongly mentioned that we need CDL. And for CDL, we need a huge or vast area of surface. Well, we now, of course, I do understand, and now we are also discussing a marine CDL, but it's not yet established methodology. So we don't expect so much, including a really contentious issues about marine ecosystem. So just focusing on land side, we need huge area for CDL. So there are agriculture, there are conservation, but also for CDL. And quite often CDL probably forest, but it's really additional forest. And is it really possible to have more forest? And also in terms of the decarbonization of industry, another session said that if we try to decarbonize totally the air traffic area, that means under the Corsia scheme, all crops should be used for SAF. It's unbelievable thing, of course. So we know that it's not at all possible. But that means there were so many requests, not only for food, but also for sustainable aviation fuel. So there are much more complicated issue. And so of course, I do not have any clear answer on it. And rather, really willing to hear what your present thought on it. Which part should be prioritized, or which kind of solution or technology could exist possibly in near future? I'm really struggling how to really reconcile, in a sense, all these demands and needs to have sustainable, climate neutral society in the future.
Thank you. So you made the challenge even more complicated. That's why we're here. We're having a brainstorm. I don't have a solution, and I think Alain also doesn't have a solution. Anybody else with some thoughts? Yeah? Please, can you pass the mic? Please introduce yourself.
Are you speaking in French better? My English
Okay.
is low.
I will try to translate.
Thank
If someone else can speak French better than me, then please help. Can you help with translating? Okay. Merci beaucoup.
C'est bon. Merci beaucoup pour le partage d'expérience.
Thanks everyone for the sharing experience.
Oui, moi je travaille avec une organisation locale au Niger.
I'm working with a local organization at Niger.
Nous, notre approche, ce que nous développons,
Our approach, what we
on fait ce qu'on
develop,
appelle la régénération naturelle assistée.
we used to work by using one approach talking about a regenerated natural assisted.
Cela veut dire ici on fait face à la communauté endogène.
That means we work with local communities.
Au lieu qu'ils voient aller couper les arbres que nous avons déjà plantés,
Instead of going to cut a tree that we have already planted,
maintenant dans leur parcelle,
in their field,
ils vont essayer de, là où il faut la production, que ce soit développer l'agriculture,
in their field that they are cultivating,
eux-mêmes ils vont planter.
they will plant themselves their
Et ça les
trees.
permet, si ça grandit,
If the trees grow up,
c'est là où eux-mêmes ils peuvent couper maintenant pour faire du charbon maintenant.
now they themselves they can cut it to make the charcoal or anything they want.
Au début, on les donne des foyers améliorés.
First of all, we give them a clean cooking dispositive,
Ce qui nous permet de travailler avec la direction de l'agriculture
and he brings us to work with a technical direction like
et
of agriculture
le ministère de l'Environnement
and the Ministry of Environment
pour pouvoir séquestrer le carbone.
to capture carbon.
On vient d'élaborer un projet la fois passée même,
We have even
qu'on a plus de 50 000 hectares.
we
Comme vous voyez, le Niger est vaste.
we propose a project that we will capture on field of 15 hectares. If it is
Donc on va mettre comme les acacias,
that we may plant many trees
les,
according to the
les
local.
plants que si nous mettons, ça peut régénérer d'autres choses encore.
And there's plant we give bring regeneration assisted to the people.
C'est ça, on
The land.
développe aussi les agroécologies dans certains endroits.
And we develop also agroecology system.
Dans certains avec l'appui du ministère de l'Environnement,
With the support of
l'élevage, tout ça là.
leaves, woods.
Mais
Also.
quand on parle de crédit carbone, ça ne se limite seulement de planter les arbres.
And when we talk about carbon credit, it's not only limited to plant the trees,
Donc on va au-delà.
but we go ahead.
Aujourd'hui, on est en train de développer l'approche qui rentre à HDP.
Today we are developing an approach, a peace and humanitarian and development.
C'est ça. Donc, comme c'est une zone d'insécurité,
As we are living,
on met l'accent sur l'humanitaire,
as we are living,
le développement et la paix.
as we are living a city or a regional crisis zone, we use that approach of peace, humanitarian and peace.
On met les femmes au centre.
And we put women in the middle.
Les femmes, on renforce leurs capacités
We empower women
à terme de développer l'agriculture de 4 saisons et d'agriculture de
to
résilience.
develop agriculture. How can I say it? The maraîchage. I don't know how to explain it in English.
Parce que si on veut la paix,
If we want peace,
la source, il faut qu'on attaque les femmes.
the source is to
Si on
work
investit
with
sur
women.
les femmes,
And when we invest in women,
s'ils développent l'agriculture,
and when they develop
il faut prendre
agriculture,
à charge les communautés, les enfants,
they can take care of children,
et le développement va y aller.
and the works will
Merci.
go on. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
You wanted to add something as well. Can I respond to this first? I think this is a really important example of how we can work in local contexts on optimizing what is there. But I want to complicate this a little bit. If I read the literature, we are looking at yield losses of up to 30% in Africa by 2050. That is within 25 years. I will be retired by then, but I hope I will still be alive. 30% yield loss is a very big loss to compensate for. So that means we need a lot more land, and is that available, and how do we deal with that? Just a reflection. Maybe you wanted to add something. Can you introduce yourself also, please?
My name Adjoda Kujo.
Okay, his name is Adjoda Kujo,
Coordonnateur de l'ONG Action pour le développement du Sahel,
General Coordinator of Action of Development of Sahel, Niger.
Niger.
Okay, thank you. My name is Kojo, and I'm program manager of the same organization. As he said, it is true because the case of Africa, most especially West Africa, we live problem of conflicts is a case that we must take time to study and know how can we manage local societies. Like he has said, that we need to coordinate in a local level, going to regional before come into international level. And as we can, first of all, I will say we need to be truth enough in ourselves that the action we should take must be a result for the future generation that are coming. And for the youth, we must start from the young child or the child, because if I look, I have already said somewhere that this COP is 29. That means we start, if it is a man, he has already 29 years old. And as he is growing up, that means he is developing a aptitude, capacity, building himself capacity to overcome some challenges. But until today, we are not, we are, I will say, we are powerless enough to overcome, or not overcome, but to enhance or to catch on this situation of climate change. Therefore, from my own perspective, as a member of local communities, we must go deeper, looking for solution, scaling the local practice that they used to do, because our fathers, our mothers, our elders, the lands they have yesterday is not the same we have today. We are continuing degrading the land. What can I do? What we, civil societies, members of communities, a private sector, a government, political, can we do together to avoid degrading the land, to avoid or to come over? And I will suggest, first of all, to have a task force starting from local level. And the second one, building capacities, not only what we have studied at university or so on, because we used to have a test that those who are in the background, they are not evolving. They not, we use great ways that they are not understanding in the lower level. We need to bring down our ways, first of all, building their capacity and scaling their practice, and also how can we move ahead, have access to finance, because one of the challenges that we have, not locally but everyone, is access to finance, availability and access to finance. And when we can go ahead by the local level, I think if we want to build something international, we must start by locally. Each local action will bring us to international level. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, please.
All right, thank you. My name is Bukola. I'm from Nigeria, although I stay in Lagos, and I work with the Lagos EPA. I find this conversation quite interesting, and from the Nigerian context, I was listening to her when she was talking about, the different targets and policies in terms of land and the expectation towards, the coming years. And I'll quickly look back and I'm like, okay, in the northern part of Nigeria, for example, a lot of farming takes place, and the larger quantity of the food that we eat comes from that part. But I'm also aware that the northern part of Nigeria, just like the other northern parts of Africa, there's been a lot of problem with desertification. A lot of the desert is eating deep into their farmlands. And so it's also affecting the animals. And then you have many of these farmers come towards the south looking for land to be able to feed their animals. And then this is actually causing a lot of conflicts, because the herders are looking for green pastures for their animals, but these animals are encroaching into the farmlands of people in the south. And so there's a lot of conflict in that part. And then if you now come down south, where we have enough land, there's also the problem of degradation due to oil exploration, like in the Niger Delta region. There's a lot of degradation of their farmland and even their water that is affecting them economically. And so when you look at all these things, the conflict, the degradation, and then the need for survival, you begin to wonder, how do you marry these things? A lot of ideas have come. People have spoken about technology, more advanced technology in agriculture. Some even said for those herders, for example, they should go into ranching. And then the question is, how much land do we have available? Enough for them to be able to ranch. And then you look at, if you say technology, then the issue of finance, like he spoke about, comes into it. how do you translate all these things? So I feel that a lot of it also rests on the government, the kind of policies they make locally for their people. I think and then I feel that the policies should also take into consideration the local people. They should be a part. They should have a seat on the table where those policies are being made, so that they can share their concerns and they can also help to suggest solutions that they would be a part of. Because sometimes when you take these policies and these people you're making the policies for can't take ownership of it, it won't work eventually, because they have their cultural bias, they have so many things, economic survival, they have so many things they want to think about. And so if they are not a part of it, some of these ideas and these things that we want to do, we might end up not being able to achieve it. Thank you.
Thank you. So important to add the local communities into the conversation for the planning. I want to zoom out a little bit and look at the global scale. Because when I think about it, nature, the business case for nature is not very strong in most areas. The business case for agriculture, for food, is okay, depends a bit on what crops you grow. But the business case for biofuel, the business case for livestock fodder is much better. And if we want to protect nature, and if we need to feed the people, and we need more land, and if for carbon sequestration we need even more land, then what needs to reduce? And how can we do that in a responsible manner? And who needs to be involved in that? I think that's a question that goes beyond the problems that we have in local communities and in countries. I see Lucas. Alain, maybe you start first, and then the microphone can go to Lucas.
Yeah, maybe Timo, with your intervention, I think now things are also becoming a bit clearer that a higher level planning is needed. And now we have a greater opportunity than ever when countries are revising their NBSAP and NDCs to think twice on these trade-offs and how to harmonize the 3 Rio Convention targets. You know, people can be on different extremes. If I am from environment, I would, be leaned on, let's protect 30% of every ecosystem, every country, every land. But again, we know it will not be sustainable as long as the population growth is increasing and people need food. And even right before that, the Malthus and Bosserap's theory, even before climate change started interacting, people were afraid that, the food growth will always be outpaced by the population growth, because food growth is linear while population growth is exponential. Now we have a trigger, which is the climate change. We need that ambitious level of revising our NBSAP, our NDCs by, I think, 11th February next year, that countries revise but thinking twice on how to harmonize the 3 Rio Conventions targets. Thank you.
Thank you. Lucas?
Yes, thank you very much for hosting this. I'm Lucas Dupré. I'm from the Netherlands. I negotiate here on agriculture and food topics. Maybe to add a perspective is, when you mention, of course, how do we reduce? We've heard several examples of what's going on and how big the pressure is. The topic of reduce will always be difficult, I think. Maybe an avenue could also be how to look to create alternatives for what we are currently doing. One way I think is also, especially currently in Western countries, is how to look to, for example, different proteins you can use to substitute also other proteins, or to add them to the mix of already existing things out there. For example, think of cellular agriculture, which is currently a lot of innovation going on. It's being developed, and I think this offers also avenues for the future to offer people an alternative they can also use when they want to consume proteins. And then, of course, the environmental impact of these innovations can be a lot lower. So you add something to the mix where you can offer people an alternative, so they don't have to stop eating. they just eat meat but a different way. Can you still hear me? Okay.
Maybe hold the mic a bit higher.
Okay, like this? Okay, sorry for that. I think that could be an avenue to further develop and which could be promising in the future. Another thing we could look into is food loss and food waste. 1/3 of the food is lost or waste before it reaches the consumer, but also afterwards when it's at the consumer, and I think there is also big wins. It's difficult. We've been working on this for a long time, and I don't think we see the percentage of 1/3 in total dropping very much. But I think we should put effort there and try to see what's possible. And also, again, innovation could maybe help us there. So that could be an interesting avenue. Thank you.
Thanks. That's indeed an interesting one. Food loss and waste. Trying to get tomatoes to the markets on bumpy roads is a big challenge. And that's just one of the things. Any other thoughts or suggestions? Yes.
Just a little bit kind of reaction to your comment, because we often talk about, particularly in developed countries, including Japan, we talk a lot about food waste or food loss, and probably totally different in, for instance, Nigeria's situation. But the issue is we don't have any kind of global forum or kind of convention to discuss that matter so far, because climate change, mandate of climate change treaty is not really about food loss or food waste, even if the agriculture is a top big issue, because agriculture itself is one big emitter source. But about food loss or food waste, I don't think that is also covered by the mandate of UNFCCC, because the morning session is all about, not all about, but circular economy. And the one comment from that is Swedish government. One comment is circular economy is neither under the mandate of UNFCCC, so we don't focus about circular economy either. So I think it really relates to how the conventions, not only Rio 3 conventions, but for instance plastic treaties or maybe other type of, probably now we are entering into a new era where we should revise the existing treaties which were born how many years ago? 1992. That means how many years ago? I don't remember. So, otherwise, even if we have a kind of the technical solution or engagement of local communities, blah, blah, blah. But as you mentioned, in global perspective, we don't have a very systemic shift or paradigm shift of how we are or how we should be. So maybe we need reconsider treaties coverage, treaties mandate, and also the integration of each treaty's part. Because we do understand that's not easy work, because the integration of treaties require another huge negotiation process. But still, I think we should think about that kind of paradigm shift to really overcome the obstacles or challenges we are really facing now in terms of land use. That's my reaction.
It touches on all the conventions. It is about UNCCD, it is about UNCBD, it is about UNFCCC. There is also the Food System Summit, which does not seem to get so much attention anymore. But perhaps there a lot of countries have really worked on food system pathways to look at their futures. Putting those together and seeing what that adds up in terms of land use requirements, what it adds up in terms of trade requirements, and then seeing if there are any bottlenecks there. Maybe that's an option to sort of get the picture. Like there's also studies of how the NDCs together add up to emission reductions. Maybe something like that will help to at least get an idea of, with the plans that we have, how much land use are we actually looking at, and what is feasible, what remaining challenges are there. Yeah, thanks. Are there any other suggestions or questions? Anybody who wants to bring anything to the table? We should have sat in a circle. I don't like sitting on a stage with people sitting in rows. I apologize, it's the setup. This is not my preference, but does anybody have anything else? No? then we can also close it. I would like to thank you so much for being here, for your wise and informative suggestions. And let's keep the conversation going. Thank you very much.